Hi, my name is Julian. I'm a self taught artist, and welcome to my mentorship, the video for December. I've been working with Steven for quite a while now. I don't actually remember how long now. I think it's been about 2 years since I started working with Steven. If you don't know who Steven Bauman is, I have a link or links. I have links to his Patreon and YouTube channel. He does a lot of Patreon stuff, and one of his Patreon services is mentorship, and that's what this is. Go check him out if you're interested in learning more about Steven, and if you're interested in doing this mentorship thing with him as well. If you have any questions or comments, feel free to comment. And once again, thank you for watching the December mentorship video. And I'll just jump right into the video now.
I've been so lucky my entire career to have always worked in my niche. And everything that I've done has made me better at what I do. Like I started out student teaching, which was an incredible amount of faith for how little actual skill and ability that I had. And I got better and better and better because of it, and so on and so forth. Like Patreon was a massive boost in terms of coming to grips with what the just bare bones most effective parts of what you do are. Because the longer it takes me to record, the more work I have to do video editing, and the less effective in a way the course is, right? Like if you can give 15 minutes of advice in 5 minutes, it's better, period.
Yeah.
Um, and so kind of distilling and distilling was always such an advancement in my knowledge and my understanding of what I was doing. So the idea of, yeah, like video editing those for even a hypothetical purpose or a real one, yeah, obviously it's a great idea.
Yeah. I'm actually wondering, you mentioned that a lot of the things that you've done throughout your life have helped push you in one direction.
Hmm.
I recently read a book called Range by David Epstein,
Hmm.
and it's about the opposite, about spreading out and
Hmm.
sampling different things.
Yeah.
I wonder what you think about that. Was there anything else in your life that you might have gravitated to, if not for
Hmm.
fine arts?
In my life, no, but I think that model, I definitely have an interface with that particular model. Like that's actually how I worked with drawing and painting.
Hmm.
Like the most effective way to advance the furthest fastest is to maintain far less variables, right? Like only graphite, only portraits, only this format, only this amount of time. Like keeping everything perfectly constant makes you advance further faster. I didn't. I changed up every variable I could constantly. I'd
Hmm.
work in sanguine, I'd work in this, I'd do that, I'd try charcoal, this light source, that light source, a different concept, a different paper, painting. I'm doing big compositions, small compositions, painting fast and painting slow. I'm changing every possible variable that I can. Not because I was smart, just because my concept of what I had to do was kind of haywire. Now
I see.
describe it like this, like it's totally chaotic. It wasn't like that chaotic. But looking back on it in terms of what was optimal, it was far more diverse, far more spread. And I think what that helped me to do was to kind of expand my concept of how big the sandbox was and grab all the tools that I could from those disparate areas. There's things that, working in washes in graphite on stretched paper had nothing to do with what my primary role was, but there were things about that that inevitably helped me in another space that I couldn't have kind of related to had I not been a kind of wild experimenter. So
Hmm.
not with my life. I didn't I wasn't like a milk delivery man in Wisconsin for a year and then like a
Right.
newspaper writer in Boston for a year. It was always like very much in the arts. Yeah.
Hmm. Within the arts, did you ever try doing landscapes or like,
Oh yeah. I mean that was another variable to change. I would paint
yeah,
landscapes, I paint still
like the
lives, I paint
subject?
portraits, I paint
Yeah.
nudes, I paint, you know, like all these things are like slightly different disciplines unto themselves. And when you look at really successful landscape painters, guess what they do? They landscape paint. They
Right.
they don't they do do a bunch of other stuff along with it. But sometimes it's not that person's personality, and I guess the lucky thing for me and all that is that nobody's path to success in the arts really looks the same. I would bet you even look at the narrowest of demographics, like professional artists that just paint and show work. Each one of their stories is going to be different. Like the path that got them to that, you know? It's always some version of like the Ben Fensky story where he was a landscape painter living in Tuscany, and he got a shot to show at this gallery in New York that was like the gallery kind of everybody wanted to be at. So he brought a bunch of paintings to it, the show, and like nothing sold. And then he dropped off a couple of like odd paintings at this other gallery, Grenning, that he didn't, not that he didn't care about, but like he just wasn't really enamored by. Both paintings sold immediately. She asked for more. He sent more. She kept selling them. 10 years later, like he's makes a living from that gallery. It's always this kind of thing, and that's why like the just don't quit is like the only real variable, like persistence and tenacity, and probably like being open to these other things, these other possibilities, not closing yourself off because it's not the one you wanted, Like
Hmm.
real talk, let's say, did I want to become an online educator? That's not a want. I would have rather just painted all my paintings and everybody would just love me and pay me, and all I would do is like just
Hmm.
my own creative work because that's where my imagination went. But I do have like nested in me, I do have the skills and the mentality that actually made me perfect for something I hadn't thought of.
Hmm. I realized that across a couple of interviews, sometimes people would ask, when you were just starting out, what did you think you would do, and how far did you end up from that? You know, and I think the answer is very typically quite far from the initial measure, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
Yeah, there's that the saying about that I really love about like entrepreneurship, right? People that are just serial business starters. They start business after business after business. It's not that they do one and then it works, and then everything else just comes out of that. They go over and over and over again until they find the one where there's traction and that grows. And then what probably happens is they start another one because really they're serial business starters.
mhm,
They're not people that just are looking for a thing to land on and be there forever. And if like I think about my career path as like in a way like a series of businesses, which it kind of nominally is if you really kind of give them a chance. My studio gallery artist business failed. I mean, it made a bit of money, but it's not life money. It was sort of inconsistent, and yeah, like couldn't it didn't turn into the flourishing business that you would want it to. And so I had to move on to other things and try other things until one really hit, which is crazy because it was like a $5 to $10 subscription to like silent videos of me drawing, which is insane. I feel so in some ways lucky that I started when that was still on the menu.
mhm,
I say a lot that, whatever, doesn't matter when you start. I mean, there's a certain point at which like, wow, like I really like the offering was low and the traction I got for it was massive. But it's because I jumped into it when nobody else wanted to do it. I think all the other artists that were at my level and I remember feeling this at the start. I mean, and this is a huge thing. I remember feeling at the start, oh shit, I'm gonna be like kind of ostracized for this. Like
mm,
other artists like me at my level are gonna look at me doing this and go, oh, that's a bad move. Like that's desperate. You shouldn't do that. And I talked to a friend of mine about that, and I just came to the conclusion like, no, I think it'll work, and I did it anyway. But it was exactly that kind of groupthink and that resistance that meant I was on the crest of the wave, at least for artists in my field. And that's why I was able to succeed so much so early because nobody at that level was even wanting to be in the neighborhood of it.
mhm.
Now, fucking everybody has a Patreon. People that are like the most down their noses gallery artists are running a Patreon page. I mean, I don't want to rewrite history like I'm the hero. I figured it out. No, I mean, I was desperate because I had just had a two-man show and like none of my paintings sold. And I was like, well, what am I gonna do? I can't. That's not a career. When you prepare for 6 months, you have the big opening. If it's great, most everything's sold before the opening. But you have the
Mhm.
opening and nothing sells, you got to start asking questions. I mean, if you asked me to like run the numbers on that, I would say it's not really the right gallery for my work. If I looked at the 12-month timeline, sure, maybe 50% of the paintings sold, which is still not good, but it's if I would have said you're going to contribute these paintings, 50% will sell, that's not so bad. I would have had a better outlook on it. Actually, the work itself was really, really decent. Even by like my current standard, I would say it was decent. Some of it was really good. So the reasons that it didn't sell, I think, really had to do with like the marketing, the audience at that gallery, and my expectation that there would be some action early on. But it threw me for a loop, and I had to search for other solutions, you know?
Mhm.
Not because I was like smartest guy in the block who was tapped into Patreon before everybody else was. It was a move I had to make. Yeah. You did
Yeah.
ask some questions in your email actually about like things that matter production wise when you start out. I believe that there are less things quality wise that matter when you start as there are consistency wise when things start. And I think
Mhm.
that you'll probably have the opportunity to do this given that it's like a kind of a dedicated thing, but you need to have a place to be where the only thing you have to do to make the content is press a button.
One button.
If you have to set anything up, it will be the reason to not do it. Especially, by the way, if you have to record like FaceTime stuff, pressing the button is the hardest thing. After that, everything goes. You know, it almost reminds me of like when I would do panel discussions. You get asked to do a panel discussion, and it's like these, you go, oh, those are good names on the panel. I should do it.
Yeah.
So you do it because it's a good idea. And then on the way to the panel discussion, you're like, oh, why? Oh, fuck me. Why did I say yes to this? I don't want to do this. I don't want to do it. I don't want to do it. And you get up on stage and you start talking, you realize you're just talking about stuff that you know about. So who cares? But yeah, like anything that can stop you from pressing that button vis-a-vis setup, that's the thing to remove. But a very pole, good light in a softbox goes a long way. I mean, I even do, you know, when I'm right now, like I'm in a bit of a like a nomadic studio situation, which I have set up in Rome. I just have one light and a softbox, and you can still manage to light effectively your work and yourself. I don't know if you have any sort of face cam ambitions, but you can light your work and yourself with the same light, and it can be decent enough.
Yeah. I just thought these are good for me to have anyway.
But yeah, like anything else that would be kind of cool to have. I mean, you probably won't need it, but you are working in graphite, and if there's value involved, you could consider a polarizing lens. I mean, in a perfect world, to like really shoot stuff, you're gonna, you know, polarize the light and the camera, but don't let great stand in the way of good because a polarizing lens just on the camera still does quite a lot to kind of reduce the graphite. And graphite is naturally shiny is the problem.
Mhm.
Like I finally did, I went all the way in and I got light tubes to like so I could get like an even cross light. And I polarized, I made polarizers for them and polarizers for the lens. So it's the first time I ever shot something like cross polarized. Guess what? It's a huge difference. But getting a polarizing lens cheap and it goes a long way to making your outcome a little bit better. And also because you have the professional light, you're gonna have enough light coming onto the paper because it reduces the amount of light coming in.
Oh yeah.
It'll counteract that because there's so much light there.
Right.
But I've got your drawing here, Junyi. You said you did composition studies for it, and I think the composition looks fucking great, actually.
Oh good.
It's really cool. Yeah, it seems like almost like there's a kind of a like a quantum leap in terms of like your handling of value shapes. Like they I mean the term that I want to use is that they make so much more sense than they usually do. And I think some of this comes from, and I hate to say it, but like comes from considering the whole picture. You know, all the time I'm trying to get students to stop thinking about this little shape and start to think about the entire form of the cheek and the jaw. That is the form that you're modeling. And that is what makes like the shadow edge that you're working with what it is. And that is the thing that eventually you need to make look round by using kind of light in the appropriate places. So there's this difference in between looking at this kind of very small, very limited vision and seeing things like bigger. Now, this is just one shape in relationship to one form, but the scene itself is somewhat of a shape, right? And when you're focused on making the whole scene work, I feel like it that trickles down to like better, smaller decisions as well.
Yeah, I'm glad to hear that the composition is good. I honestly, I was thinking to myself, well, I wonder what would happen if I just decided not to do anything below the neck.
Yeah.
And, you know, the idea that you mentioned before about thinking about that you're making a piece of art and not a drawing of a person.
Mhm.
There was like a switch that flipped in my head
Yeah.
after thinking about it for a bit.
Yeah. Yeah. You're making an artwork or a composition wherein there's a person.
Right.
Yeah.
And like so in my head it's not as important to make a line where there's the hair and there's no hair, it's background. I don't
Yeah.
need to make a line there
Yeah.
because I'm not drawing a person. I'm making
Yeah. It's
a
funny,
picture.
like you know, I've tried for years to like describe the line in between the two experiences that you're talking about right now. And I've never come up with a description of it that I felt satisfied about because it's like it's about how you treat your tools and it's about what you care about and what's more important. It's a priorities list. And I just find so consistently that when it changes in the way that you're describing, like better drawings start happening. And I'm not a mystic. I do believe in unseen things in the universe. Love is impossible to touch, but it's there. So I feel like there's like this shift in mentality and shift in perception that occurs. And like, I think the sooner people switch on to that, yeah, I mean, you can improve fundamentals. Your fundamentals will improve. You're drawing, you're making values, you're making design, all the
Mm.
things that you need to still do really well, you'll have to work on, but your pictures will also be phenomenally better. I mean, let's say phenomenally. I think phenomenally better in the longest term because you've changed your focus from this small idea of rendering a thing into this larger idea of like, I'm making a picture about something that matters to me. I feel like I subvert myself as an art teacher to say it, but it's like you're kind of shifting your focus into a passion, into something you care about, into a place of like love or joy, and that's actually what's kind of fueling the technical improvement as well. You'll work 10 times harder for something that you care about than something that's merely an exercise.
Right.
And I just want to bottle that. I want to bottle that and like give that to the world, you know? I mean, that's I think like the whole push in composition is to at least initiate the idea that or the notion that you start with an idea you can care about, you know? Like if you just get assigned an easel and you get thrown in front of the model and you say without thinking just draw, but it kind of removes anything that's possible to really engage your emotional world with it. It really just becomes like a math problem, a fun, maybe interesting one, but a math problem nonetheless. And I spent years doing that because I'm a person that, loves the safety of analytics. But I kind of went through this change and it kind of made a massive difference to me to the point where like even in my life, which I've been doing this a long time, people that know me are like, wow, I don't know what happened to your work recently, but it's way different. And I just think, well, yeah, it is. It's massively is. But I know why. I know exactly why it's different. Why is this erasing instead of, oh, because I'm on the eraser tool? It's different because I care more, or I care in like a different way for the thing that I'm doing, which sounds crazy. Like, oh, aren't you an artist? Like, you should just care uniformly and manifestly across things. Well, yeah, but no, doesn't really work like that, unfortunately. So sorry, I was looking at the picture and I kept thinking. And I'll explain this in the way that I would think about it for myself, because I think sometimes we respond to things that maybe don't yet have like a perfect answer or reason for being, but it doesn't mean you shouldn't do them. I kept looking at this drawing and thinking, or feeling rather, that there was kind of like an imbalance in it, a little bit. It's almost like, do you know what a steelyard composition is?
Steelyard.
Well, a steelyard composition is when you have a really large object on one side that is
Mm.
balanced because of a smaller and isolated object on the other side. Now, if these two objects were next to each other, obviously there'd be a massive imbalance to this side. But because this one is out here hanging out in this isolated space, it's able to create a balance in the composition. So when I'm looking at this now, to me, it feels almost like it's hanging a little bit too heavily onto that left-hand side. And I want to just grab and hold a little bit a part of the edge on the other side. Not maybe a big part of it, but like a part of it, where we can say, yeah, okay, that's creating a kind of balance over there, just a little bit of an edge, and then losing a lot of the rest around the back of the head, which admittedly is not as significant. Now I feel like there's a little bit of balance in this overall, but I would guess that your composition in your sketch might have looked more like that than open-ended.
I'm sorry, I can't corroborate, but I don't remember.
Ah, I don't remember. Okay.
Yeah. But
Yeah.
that does look nice, sir. I think.
Yeah, something about like giving it a frame was always really it does a lot for me. Even if it's applied kind of retroactively. I remember talking to a photographer about this, and I always kind of wondered with these portrait photographs they do they shoot and crop later, or do they shoot for the frame that they have? You know what I mean? Do they compose for their frame, or do they compose later for whatever they think the optimal composition is? And he
Hmm.
said he always shoots for the frame, like he always shoots for what the camera is. So in his mind, the frame comes first, and then he works inside that frame, which is like it's just an idea. It's not. I'm not saying that's gospel and that's what we all have to follow. But the notion struck me that like a frame is a kind of it establishes a parameter that you need to play inside of, or you need to solve for.
Yeah. A lot of the time when I take photos, I, well, maybe 70/30, I'll crop it
Mm.
because the composition is better with a different crop.
Mhm. There are a couple of places where maybe, I mean, I just look at it slightly from a likeness perspective. I think kind of two things jump out at me that are kind of noteworthy. One would be the height of that nostril as it comes down in relationship to where the front plane of the nose is hitting the front plane of or bottom plane of the nose is hitting the front plane of the face. And then the overall gesture of the nose through here strikes me as being just a little bit off. Like there's a slightly different gesture to that area that I'd almost want to like maybe round off a little bit. That kind of tip of the nose and probably bring up a little bit that bottom edge of the nostril. Yeah. And I think maybe you may have overestimated a little bit the kind of concavity here.
Hmm.
Like I think I see the point where that's coming from, but maybe it's like slightly overcooked. Yeah, to me that gets a little bit better.
Yeah, I'd agree.
And then there's another thing. It's kind of like, I mean, it's not a cheat code, is it? But there is a feature of the wing of the nose that I use whether it's there or not, just because 90% of the time it is there, and so
Mhm.
you can take it. But there's a slightly up-facing plane right here. I mean, you can conversely say that there's a turn of the plane of the nose down, or the turn of the plane of the wing of the nose downward at this point. But let's be affirmative and say there's an upturning plane here. It always helps because when you kind of nudge that upward slightly, it announces a little bit more like the form of the wing of the nose and how that's separate from the central cartilages. So you can either like choose to go darker here or lighter on that up plane. Just depends on what the value key you're working in is. But it'll like almost always result in the nose seeming to have a little bit more form than it otherwise would. There might be as well. It might be as well like an overestimation of the boundary here, like between the wing of the nose and the kind of front plane of the face. It gets overestimated because of the power of the symbol of the nose sticking out from the face, I think, in our minds. But when you actually analyze it, sometimes there's like quite a transition happening there that's considerably softer than like an outline would be. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And you can kind of save that outline for the cast shadow maybe. But now I'm getting into territory that's like freewheeling a little bit. Yeah, I was talking to another student earlier today also about composition and things as well. And I was saying that, sometimes I get caught teaching where I'm describing something in words because it's necessary in communication that I actually do not experience in words. It's kind of like this. I can explain it by saying it's kind of a steelyard where you have like a really strong boundary on one side, you have no boundary on the other side, but if you create some small boundary, there can be a balance,
Mm.
right? But I didn't look at this and first think of a steelyard or even necessarily first think of balance. I Something kind of bothered my eye. And I was listening to this graphic designer, but he was talking about his work and he said, like, I mean, effectively, I sit in a room all day and I move things around until I feel good. It's not so different from how I feel about composition. It's not that I'm rationally, analytically going through. I mean, I spent a lot of time reading about and messing around with and noticing analytically compositional spines and stuff, but I don't think in those words when I'm moving stuff around until I feel good. Like I'm more just moving them around. So I think the way that we study composition sometimes is like we treat it like it's prescriptive, like we're fixing the proportions of a drawing, but it's not. We're not doing that. We're feeling and imagining. And then we're using the notion of like kind of compositional spines to help us classify what we're feeling, you know? So I'm sure you've heard of Edgar Payne. Hmm?
I can't say I know the name, but I've seen this book before.
Okay. It makes me feel like my expertise are valuable when I tell people about artists they don't know about. And I'm like, oh, Payne, I think. Uh, but it was pretty cool landscape painting and wrote a really comprehensive book on like landscape composition. It's kind of the go-to text for a lot of landscape painters. So like he shows you what he sees as these spines and whether they're like found money or there's like I don't think it's that you go through and you're like I'm looking today for a radiating line composition.
Hmm.
It's like you get very familiar with them, and as you're out in the field sketching, you kind of you kind of find these opportunities for them, I guess is like the best way that I could say it. Because that's what I do in portraiture. I feel like I'm going through and I'm kind of discovering what the best composition here is, you know?
Hmm.
It's hinting and suggesting at what that composition is. And whether I have a name for it or not, I'm still arranging those shapes in that way. And having the names for them just helps you kind of like cycle through and see them maybe more easily. Which these are such cool drawings.
Hmm.
I mean, imagine how many thumbnails this guy must have done. It's unbelievable.
Hmm.
Yeah. I'd love to see your thumbnails as well, by the way. You don't have to track them down now, but
Oh yeah, I should just make a note to do that in the
mm,
email.
mhm. Yeah, I think it'd be really cool. Also because like sometimes the thumbnail like doesn't match, you know what I mean?
Yeah. Do you tend to stick to the thumbnail as you plan it usually?
Um, Not rigidly.
Okay.
Not rigidly, but so the process that I use when I'm working in portraiture, and well, this year I've taught a lot of in-person workshops, which are I mean they're fun in that you get to meet people and talk with people and stuff, but like the kind of hidden benefit for me in them, I mean, what's really beneficial is much like a when a comedian kind of goes on the road and they have like a bit that they've been working on, they need an audience to like validate it, like to know that the transmission of that joke works.
Yeah.
So there's things that I work on in my studio, and I would say that my in-person workshops are like way more current to like where what I'm doing now. So the kind of the cutting edge of what I'm doing comes out there. And one of the things that in like the last workshop that I taught, and by the way, like obviously I'm talking through all of them and like demonstrating through all of them. So like sometimes I'm giving the first best explanation of what I'm doing happens in those moments. And then that echoes out into broader dissemination through scalable products and so on. But like a lot of times when I'm doing a thumbnail, I'm searching for the big idea. And let's say like I capture my big idea. Then my goal is in the first stage of the block-in is I want to capture, like this is the larger drawing, right? Like the actual drawing that I intend to do.
Hmm.
I want to capture the big vibe and the big energy. And I'm almost not too fussed about actually drawing the portrait. I just want to get the big vibe and the big energy in there. And then I'm gonna go through later and I'm gonna go through and like make my portrait drawing, my proportions and my construction and my shadow shapes and all the rendering and all the stuff that like portrait drawing obviously contains. But so like the thumbnail for me eventually is where I capture like the big vibe. And so do I stick to it? Well, it's not so much about sticking to it, but it's about like I know what I think is important and what I think is cool. And then when I'm blocking in like the big energy version of my final drawing, I'm not searching for that thing. I know what that thing is. I also know what it isn't. And so I don't mess around, just doing busy work. Does that make sense?
I think so.
So you asked, do I stick to what I find in my thumbnail?
Yeah.
Mostly, if my thumbnail was any good. But I guess it's also about like figuring, you've got to get a little bit good at thumbnails as well. Because if you don't know what you're doing in a thumbnail, you're not going to capture a big energy. And therefore, when you translate it to your big canvas, it's going to show up and look dull. And then well, I don't know why I did any of this. Well, you did it to try to create a connection in between the two, but maybe you didn't fully realize that because the thumbnail itself didn't have the juice. I think I might have a picture of of a recent composition I did. But all right,
Mm.
I'll tell you what I do have. I do have my block in, and then I have the actual drawing itself, which eventually the block in essentially looks a lot like my thumbnail. So, in fact, it's the one that I was kind of mimicking here. So this is the block in for my drawing, and then this is about as far as I got to take the drawing, which wasn't all the way to the end. But you can see how like kind of one and the other like they both kind of come out of the same thing. It's just one has more detail. And I think
Right.
that's like the optimal place that you want to be when you're blocking in is that you can be incredibly efficient. Now, we're going a little bit off the radar here, but I think this is an incredibly important space. If you have for yourself a good thumbnail, this is the time in your drawing when there is the least amount of stuff in the way of you making big, bold value choices. Building up value is a massively inefficient prospect in graphite, especially if you have a million little shapes in the way. So if you build up your big values, you can see the values here are almost advanced to what they ultimately are here.
Hmm.
There's no features in it, right? And I'm doing that expressly because it allows me to work way faster than I would if I had a bunch of like detailed portrait work in a way. And so I found it to be an incredibly efficient, like time-saving process to have a great thumbnail that allows me to like work really rapidly towards my ultimate goal and then fill in the detail, in the shortest amount of time with the least amount of repetitive effort possible. I know that somewhere I
But you
have a
also
book.
thumbnailed this one.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah. Oh, definitely. I'm gonna see if I find it now.
I see that you actually, on the sleeve, on the model's left, you've shifted it
Ah, like on the
to
right side of
Striga
the,
value.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I mean that's down to inaccuracy. And
Oh, really?
yeah, I just put it in the wrong place when I big fived
Um,
it.
okay. Okay.
Yeah.
It seems more balanced than the later image though.
Oh, this the first one. Like
Uh
having it in this spot instead of further out.
oh no, I think further out makes it a little more balanced.
Yeah. Yeah, I had to like now I think I took this drawing like past this point, and I think eventually what I had to do was to like add a bit more value to like this lapel because really the light's like kind of coming in from that side. So in a lot of ways that part of the lapel folded in and got shadow, and then this one got light. So it became this
Mm,
kind of nice pattern of like light, dark, that ran across the lapels and created a kind of like a negative inverse, right? Like, but a repetitive shape. Yeah, I mean that drawing like really it nails something that I've been like wanting to have for like quite a while. Like it's a picture I've been trying to make for quite a while, but not I hadn't come up with the right formula for it.
it's very intense. I feel like they're mad at me or something.
Well, all right. So this model, I've obviously worked with her a tremendous amount. Sweetest person on planet Earth, but like her resting face, she looks so
Oh
angry.
no. I
Like
see.
just looks incredibly perturbed, but not true in the least. But I think it was like a really good run on this idea of like kind of composition and thumbnailing and balance. I think that you should go back to this drawing though and genuinely like should add in that shape, frame that hair. I think it makes such a nice transition. It makes it feel, you really feel like the white of the shirt and the lightness of the hair kind of going into that shadow because of that?
Yeah, I will definitely go back and do that.
Yeah.
I was actually wondering if
Tell me.
I know you didn't mention it, but in the remaining couple minutes that we have, the
Hmm.
model's left, there's a strand of hair that catches the light
Mm.
across the cheek. And I thought that was cool,
Yeah.
but in my working through this, I just couldn't get it to look very good.
Yeah. All right. I have a thing to say about it for
All
sure.
right.
If you've concluded your question, I
Yeah, yeah,
definitely have an opinion on it.
yeah.
I do this all the time. However, I think the fact that you think it looks cool should outweigh your estimation of how well you were able to complete that part. Again, it comes back to what I feel is an idea about an accumulated effect versus the performance of one small part.
Mhm.
Okay, maybe when you draw it in, like it feels, oh, it's a little bit awkward. The shape isn't as cool as it should be. Like, or these are like I'm paraphrasing things I would think about my work. Oh, the shape's not cool enough. The design isn't good, or it could be like so much cooler if I could just draw it better or whatever. I think the drawing is like so much better solely for its inclusion. Even if it looked bad, the drawing would be better for having it bad. And I see this all the time in really great paintings is you'll look at them at places and you'll find like, oh, that looks meh. It
Mhm.
looks not great. Yet it's a painting that you love and adore. Well, what's the deal? The painting is an accumulated effect. And so whatever barrier was in the way of like the inclusion of that, if it was anything technical, I think the storytelling would outweigh it. You wouldn't write a character out of a movie or out of a scene if they were an important part of the story just because you didn't get the right actor or like you need that character, that motivation to tell the story.
Mm.
What do you think? Does that
I mean,
mirror
if
your
if it
concern?
if it makes you not like the drawing more.
Yeah.
Is that still a reason to?
So you would like put it in and then you look at the drawing and go, I don't like the drawing anymore.
Yeah, I mean, maybe I should when I do it, I should wait 10 minit's and then come back
Yeah,
because
because
the expectations
the
versus
cattail.
reality. Yeah,
Um,
sorry.
it's like a shark fin coming through the sea. Yeah, I think that there's a little bit of an emotional reaction, like how it's going versus how you feel like it's going, that I think would be different in that respect. If you put it in and you really think the drawing is bad for having it, well then yeah, you should leave it out.
Okay.
But I would say that wouldn't you know that before you put it in anyway? Like what, like your motivation to put it in is that you think it does look cool.
Yeah. I
And
wonder if
then
I don't know. I think it's something that what you said before about the idea versus the execution.
yeah.
If it's a good idea, but the execution isn't great, maybe I should still do it because I should, that's just good practice and
Mhm.
my execution will follow eventually.
Exactly. But like if you don't do it, you know what I mean? You'll never interface with that particular challenge or whatever it is. I struggled so much with this as I was a perfectionist because I thought like I could if the only way I could be accepted is to be perfect. Partly because I was derided so much as a student by my teachers, that I set like this completely unrealistic standard of myself. And I think I put storytelling into the back seat because they never made fun of me or you know were rude to me about the story. It was always just the technical part of it.
Hmm.
And so it pointed me all of my effort in that direction, which ultimately is like it stifles a very important part of even your technical process. Like I said, I think we look at painters with great stories that are possessed of a great vision, and we love their technique. Yeah, well, yeah, obviously. It's a passionately important part of their storytelling process is getting the technique to carry the story. Of course it is. Whereas I almost never look at a like an artwork, I mean a proper artwork, and go like, oh, this story is so garbage, but what a technique. But Julian, I think that's the time that we have.
Yeah. Well, always a pleasure, Stephen.
So if I go to your YouTube channel, I can see the edits that you made.
Yeah. I mean, they're just, cut down maybe
Send me a
a
link. I've
day.
never, I did, I forgot completely that you were. I mean, I knew that like we had talked about it or whatever, but you never notified me that anything was there. I want to see
Oh,
it.
sure. Yeah. I'll send you a link.
Partly out of like vanity, and then another part out of like, I wonder like what some of the shit that I say is.
Oh, well, yeah. You can see the past few months. I'll send you something.
All
Okay.
right,
Cool.
awesome. Thanks, bud.
Merry
And
Christmas. Merry
listen, happy
Christmas.
holidays, and I'll see
Yeah.
you in the next one.
See you.
Cheers.